Hi, Andrew Albanese here from Publishers Weekly, coming to you from the home office, my home office here in New York City. Today we'll be joined by Veronda Pitchford, the Assistant Director at the Califa Group, to talk about a new grant-funded program designed to help librarians cope with the new roles and new realities that libraries are going to face in the age of COVID-19. Now, as many of you already know, the Califa Group is a nonprofit, California-based library membership consortium. Numbers more than 230 libraries of all sizes and types. They do a lot of national work. It's not all California-based, and they do great work on behalf of the library community. And the program that we're going to talk about today involves a new forthcoming initiative to address libraries as second responders. Now, the term second responder is how we often describe the teams that are responsible for cleaning up sites during and after an event or a crisis that requires first responders. Well, second responders are the people that help people get their lives and their work back on track. And public libraries, of course, have done great work in adapting their services during the COVID-19 crisis, but I think it's clear, even with a successful vaccine on the way, that we're just not going to flip a switch and go back to our pre-COVID past. So how do libraries prepare for what the future may demand of them? Let's ask Veronda Pitchford, who's leading the Libraries as Second Responders program for the Califa Group. Veronda, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Andrew. It's awesome to be here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, let's start here. We've had a few conversations about the Libraries as Second Responders program as it was ramping up in recent months. And one of the things that always stood out to me is something that we've talked about even on this podcast, or webinar in the past. And that's the idea that libraries need to prepare for a new normal to respond to their community's needs. So broadly speaking, what are some of the questions facing libraries that you hope that this program, the Libraries as Second Responders program, can help address?
Well, I think as many people are saying now, the libraries that were closed during the pandemic are not the same libraries that will reopen when that time comes, or even that we're reopening now during the pandemic. Things will shift, new services will arise. So I think a lot of the questions we'll be asking ourselves is, how do we continue to serve that whole person? In researching the role of first responders and second responders and learning a little bit more about that, and how social workers, et cetera, react in those settings, it's about serving the whole person, not just the immediate need they have, the transactional need. It's about, how do we serve the whole person? How do we learn what the whole person needs? Specifically, and even to drill a little deeper, how can libraries strategically plug into the network of organizations in their communities working hard to serve highly vulnerable COVID impacted communities? I think that would be a big piece of it. As we find a new normal, communities we serve are finding a new normal, and who are we and how do we meet who they are at that point?
So the COVID-19 crisis, of course, has hit during a particularly fractious period in our history. We're talking about politics and policy on our webinar today, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and speak personally. I think it's fair to say that the Trump administration has not really done a very good job putting together a comprehensive national plan to fight COVID-19. Not only that, it has, and it still is, sort of undermining a lot of trust in government. It's undermining trust in science and in expertise. I mean, wearing a mask has become political. Dr. Anthony Fauci needs a security detail.
Yeah.
So the question I want to ask you is, can public libraries help cut through that kind of noise and make a difference? Because we're going to need the services that library offer. Are we not?
Definitely. And, it's Pew has reported it. And any librarian listening to this will know that libraries remain one of the most trusted parts of local government. As our friends in DMV and other parts, local and state government, people come to us not only with their information needs, but their life needs. So as a trusted form of local government, I think we can leverage that to play a huge role. And I would say that kind of where we are in this time in our country with racial unrest, political unrest, and unfortunately, health fact unrest, has created this huge chasm between factions. And I would say it started before COVID. Frankly, I think it started with the election of Trump as people split in their beliefs, and there's just a chasm between us. I think libraries have a big role in using that trust to support communities in coming together. Now, I'm sure some libraries out there are expanding when we think of EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion in our libraries, when we think of staffing, when we think of our collections. I'm sure lots of libraries out there are thinking of how do we do this, create and infuse anti-bias training and education into our programs, not just for kids as young as 3, but with families. How can families come together who are already coming together at the library, work to learn how to make help their kids do the next best thing to make the world a better place and to bring us together, as well as themselves, just as an example.
Well, it's a great point that, COVID-19 is not the only challenge that we're facing. In 2020, the nation is in the midst of a long overdue racial and social justice awakening. And what strikes me about the Library's Second Responders program is that it seeks to apply a race, equity, and inclusion lens on library services and COVID-19 services, especially on the needs of vulnerable communities. Can you talk a little bit about why that's important?
Sure. I want to add the hugest caveat in the world because yes, I definitely believe, and I know, again, a lot of our great colleagues are doing this, applying that race equity lens. But what I want to say about it is I want to be sure to honor and make it very clear and articulate the intersectionality that comes along with that. Obviously, we're talking about LGBTQIA plus issues. We're talking about accessibility issues. We're talking about neurodivergence. And that race equity lens is all a part of that. And the race equity lens, as it relates to COVID, is specifically because statistically, people of color are the largest group hit by COVID. And I recently, with that being said, and with that being the focus of this grant, recently I read someone said, the one thing we need to do is talk to the people who are closest to the problem. And by getting closest to the problem, we can find the solution. So I think that race equity lens, makes the world a better place, and kind of back to the previous question of bringing us together to understand each other. So that's where I think we could do is use that race equity lens to go a little deeper and serve those who are most needed and learn more how to get at a solution for all of this, for the racial injustice issues, as well as this chasm that's created.
Okay, details time.
Ooh.
How will the Libraries of Second Responders project help? Specifically, what is this project going to deliver, and what's the timeline on this?
I don't know why I was so scared when you said the word details, but this is who I am. First of all, the Libraries of Second Responders program, which I neglected to mention initially, is funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, a federal agency serving libraries and museums, and we're very grateful for that. My organization, Califa, for which I work, has a training arm called Info People, and it's a national online training arm with instructional designers to help experts design training for optimum learning. We are going to work together with an advisory group of first responders and second responders. So hoping to have social workers. I'm in conversation with them now. Social workers, people in public health, people who are working with community-based organizations, serving vulnerable population, of course, library folks, from all walks of life working together to co-create content for recorded modules to train librarians how to, and library people, not just librarians, library people on how to find out what the needs are in their community. What we want to have here is a model in which we can assess, just as a first responder gets to a site in life-saving mode and assesses what's important, what needs to be priority done first, etc. In that second responder role, we have strategy to respond and plug into the network of other second responders and serve folks. And it unfortunately will hopefully work in other crises down the road. And I say unfortunately because there will be other crises down the road. So this will be recorded online training available at any time, along with very short micro learnings that are be about 5 minutes that are shareable, that people can have access to whenever and whatever they need. The modules will be released starting in late spring of 2021. And we'll continue to release them every quarter throughout 2021. And we'll be looking for feedback from the library community along with other communities as to how it's going, how it's resonating with them. Built into the program, we do have a group of folks outside of advisory called the end user reviewers. So there'll be frontline people as subject matter expertise works with an instructional designer, reacting to the content to see how it could be applicable in their library setting, so that we're sure to hit the right target in terms of what libraries need from these groups. So they'll be helping to give feedback, to keep reiterating the content to make it better and better before it's recorded. And there'll be resources involved in that too, meaning key websites, key organizations, leading practices. There's some great things going on right now as to how folks are working together, how library folks are working together with their community, plugging into their communities to serve COVID impacted communities.
Great. So last question.
Okay.
It's a topic we've spoken about over the months that we've been in touch about this project. It's made headlines around the country, and that's the stress that's been placed on library workers during the pandemic. You know, many of them have taken on expanded roles. They've often been put in harm's way, sometimes often without proper training, even the proper safety precautions, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. Any message for frontline workers who have struggled so far with this pandemic, and any help that this program might offer them?
Well, first of all, hearing what's going on with people, of course, like many of my colleagues, it's breaking my heart because I've seen what people are going through. I've seen library folks doing more than ever before in the scariest time in my lifetime. They are on the front line serving, and I just can't say how much respect I have for them. As we've talked about this issue, and I've talked about what needs to be done with issues such as this, it really starts at the top with structural change. So at leadership levels, how can we stress to leadership what needs to happen and when? That's not something this program can address, but it's something that I would love to see us as an industry work forward on. There has to be a way, either at a region, a state, or nationally, that we can come together to support our community doing such good work and make it safe for them to be at work.
The program is Libraries as Second Responders. We've been talking with Veronda Pitchford from the Califa Group. Veronda, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.